That then brings us back to 754304, which is the only one that I can think of that in any way, if someone could claim, again, it's not my belief that they could properly claim that he has a substantial interest. If they did, because of the fact that he's disclosed this to everyone, the only thing I can find that he would be barred from doing is voting on matters that involve a contract with that party. I think it would be wise, given the fact that we've had many discussions here that Hillsdale Land and Cattle is a subsidiary of North Point. If you were to be of the belief, and again I want to make it clear, I am not, but if you were of the belief that he should abstain from any voting involving contracts, I would say that shouldn't be just Hillsdale Land and Cattle, but should be North Point as well. So where that brings us then is my recommendation to the council, and that is page 5. Page 5 is 754303A, which states the Governmental Ethics Commission shall render advisory opinions on the interpretation or application of 4301A, 4302A, 4303A, 4304, 4305, and 4306, and amendments thereto. The opinions shall be rendered after receipt of a written request, therefore, by a local government officer or employee, or by any person who has filed as a candidate for local office. Any person who requests and receives an advisory opinion and who acts in accordance with the provisions shall be presumed to have complied with the provisions of the General Conflict of Interest Law. As I started this off in saying, this is Josh's call, how he decides to vote from here on out. It is my opinion to this council that he does not have a substantial interest. But I would feel better as your council if we could receive an advisory opinion that makes that 100% clear. That does not require Josh's participation. I hope you would be okay with that. Certainly, I'm going to ask for a vote, and I would ask you to abstain from that because it does involve me. But I would recommend to the council that we ask for that so that we can have a clear answer from the Ethics Committee. Is there any conflict of interest here? Is there a substantial interest? Do any of these items arise, and do we need to be prepared for that moving forward? So I would ask for a motion from the council to allow me next week to request that advisory opinion. Well, I'll stop there. That would be my request first. If that's agreeable to you, or if you have any questions on that advisory opinion.
And I actually have a comment. I know that it's probably not the right time, but sure. I can tell you, you said that you were going to ask that I spoke directly to the attorney with the Ethics Committee, and he said that it is not the Ethics Committee that deals with it. It would be the Johnson County District Attorney himself. So if you are going to look for the advisory, then it would be with the Johnson County District Attorney. And that is coming from the attorney at the Ethics Committee himself. I know that in this, it says it's really hyper-focusing on the definitions of substantial interest. I would like to say a few things. I mean, obviously people contact me and talk to me everywhere, and so just a few points that I would like to make. And Joshua, I know that you are committed to Edgerton. My husband has nothing but good things to say about you, but this is a whole separate issue of things that are actually concerning. One, I actually have and I have it right here that actually says that that is not even zoned for residential dwelling.
And I'm coming back to that.
Okay, and then also, the Hillsdale Cattle Company, to my knowledge, is a part of North Point.
Is a subsidiary, as I stated before.
Right, and so, to me, you know, what he said when I was talking to the attorney with the Ethics Committee is, and I'm just giving you this information because I don't want to withhold any information, but if you even think that there may be a conflict of interest and you decide to vote on it, then that actually possibly get you in more trouble if it is deemed that there is a conflict of interest. So in your best interest, in my opinion, would be to recuse yourself from voting because until it is set in stone that you possibly could not have a conflict of interest. And the residents it looks bad. It does.
Well, and that's exactly why you and you make this information known to them.
Mhm.
I would disagree with you on the DA portion. What I work under and have to work within, or whether it's substantial interest or a conflict of interest, is the city code and the state statute. And I'd be glad if you want to give me the name. You know who you spoke with at the ethics committee, or you give it to me
It
later.
was the attorney.
Perfect.
I mean,
So-
I have the number, I could.
Great.
probably
Yeah.
call.
If you get that to
It was
me,
the attorney.
that'd be great. But okay. But he or she
Me.
has to work within the bounds of the Kansas statutes. And the Kansas statutes don't say, and send it to the DA. They say, send it to he or she. So if I send it to them and their answer is, well, this is crazy, first of all, I'm going to say, well, there's a statute right here that says it comes to you. We better talk to the legislature and get that changed. But if there is some recommendation by them to send it to the DA,
That's exactly what. he
wonderful. And if that's the case, great. But I find that hard to believe because his job is defined within the bounds of this statute. His or her job is defined right there. It will come to them. But again, I'd like to think that again, our role as a commission does not involve any sort of judgment, regulation, or penalty on this item. It was Josh who shared this with me, didn't have to, and Josh who allowed me to bring it forth to you and the public based on what you're talking about so that everybody can understand this is what he is dealing with. These are the facts. So I would be glad to send it to whomever we need to, but this is the final answer on the matter of substantial interest, which is the issue, that the statute that you provided in your email, I'm assuming from that phone call.
Yeah.
So if there's more to that, great. We let that be known. Again, our job, that Josh's call on what he wants to do from
Right,
here.
well, it's his obligation alone.
That's correct.
We all know that.
So as to you are correct, you mentioned first the other item, which was living in a North Point owned home, which is not zoned for residential dwelling. This is a property, again, I asked him the question on this. This is a property that was rezoned from ag to LP. We have had, and Katie isn't here to shake her head and sigh with me, but we have had multiple situations with property owners who were on a property that was previously zoned one way. And then after the zoning, that property remained, in this case, residential before, with a residence on the property post rezoning. And until that property is changed, buildings are built, industry is put up, warehouses are put in, whatever the case may be, a restaurant is put in, whatever it is. Until that time, the use that occurred prior to the rezoning is allowed as a non-conforming prior use to infinity, so long as it is continuous within a year. So if someone is living in the residence, changes the rezoning, living in the residence, moves, and someone comes back in within that year. That's the way our planning and zoning, our UDC code specifically is listed. And so that one to me, while we have lots of papers and documents and highlights here, that one's a lot easier on our end because there are multiple, from my understanding. I know that Katie and I dealt with one somewhat recently where there are residences on commercial property, previously residential, remained with a residence on the property, have not built a commercial business, and it is allowed per our UDC. So again, I would remind everyone, let's say that I again would advise that is not a violation. It's clearly within the bounds of your UDC. But if it weren't, that is not a Josh can't vote issue. That is not a Josh is in violation issue. Were it a violation, that would be a property owner is in violation issue. And again, we have dealt with this exact issue elsewhere. So I don't think, I know that has absolutely no bearing on the question of Josh's ability to vote or as we deal with this issue that was pulled. Because it does not involve him, it is the property owner who would be in violation were it a violation.
Can I ask a quick question?
Certainly.
Can you circle back around to, that the dwelling has to be lived in for a certain
I'd be glad to give you
time?
I'll give you the UDC code.
Okay, because, well, and I to my knowledge, and I believe there's a few people actually out there that know the wasn't this house empty for a very long time?
Well, it can be.
Well, I think the point that Lee said was it had, from the point of rezoning. So when it changed from RUR
Right.
to LP zoning, it would have been vacant within a year, or in a year worth of time from that zoning.
Or it loses the previously non-conforming use. And again, if you believe that's a violation, I don't want to go down that road. I'd be glad to walk you through it, and we can show, and if we believe a letter needs to be sent to the property owner regarding that, fine. But it has no bearing on what we're dealing with this evening, or his ability to vote. So I'd be glad to show you that statute, or that UDC section.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually just, I'm relaying some information, but I do have my own questions. I mean,
Sure.
as an outsider and a resident, when I saw that this happened, how did you come into that lease agreement also? Like, at what point, you must know someone within the Hillsdale Cattle Company to make that arrangement. So how did that arrangement come to be? That house was
Well,
available?
I mean, this evening
That's
is not.
a conflict of interest question. that I'm
Well,
asking.
and so let's let people who will make the final decision on that make that decision.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think our position this evening is a deposition of Josh.
No, I don't.
And I would also say that when you are dealing in a community of this size, if we were to go down a rabbit hole of that nature, I think it's fair to say that, Jody, how is it, I'm making this up, everyone, I'm making this up. Jody, isn't it the case that you go over and have drinks with Steve, whose property we obtained an easement from, and how did that relation come up? That's the problem, I think, is certainly with the city of the third class and the size we're dealing with, there are connections all over. If there is an ethical conflict, it needs to be brought to light, and it needs to be dealt with. There are specific statutory requirements to do just that. And instead of me coming here and saying, Josh, your call, we're moving on, my recommendation to council is, Josh, your call, but I want an answer so that we know, and I can properly advise the city the best way to look at everything he's going to do from this point forward. And we have a tried and true method required by Kansas legislature to get that answer. Why wouldn't we?
Right. So, and I will add to that, because of Joseph's question.
Sure.
Is really, I trust that you're saying what you were told, but I see the Kansas ethics as the ones that are obligated to give their opinion. If that opinion was wrong, then you would go to the DA for prosecution of that Class B misdemeanor. So that is the difference. They have to give an opinion if Lee sends them a letter. They don't have a choice.
Well, yeah.
And so that opinion would also, if it was opinion to like your email, then that opinion would be used by the DA as that prosecution. With Lee's advice to the council, which is to send it there to get the opinion, that clears this up regardless from a city's legal perspective, and really then it's all Josh.
And the beauty of the language, this is rare in the legislature that it's this clear, but it is. And document 5 is, any person who requests and receives an advisory opinion and who acts in accordance with its provisions shall be presumed to have complied with the provisions of the general conflict of interest law.
Right.
Which is key. You get that letter, you know from now on, if we act pursuant to the terms of this letter, we are doing so, and we are, for lack of a better term, protected. And that's why we want this. So I don't want to have any situation where I'm clouding the key issue at hand, which is, this is Josh's call. This is not regulated by us. This is not regulated by me as your attorney. Josh can vote however he so chooses on this item and any other items involving this party or any others as we move forward. I just want you to be aware of this, and I wanted this opportunity to have a motion from you guys to send that letter early next week so we can get that going and get that answer. And I think that's important for all of you, and it's important for the public to know that answer.
So let's move back to that motion. So the way I would word that is, I'm going to entertain a motion to direct the city attorney to reach out about this question we talked about to the Kansas Ethics Commission for an opinion next week, and then whenever they respond, report back.
Correct. That's correct.
We have a motion by Clay, or a second?
One second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Longenecker?
Aye.
Councilmember Lewis?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Bean?
Aye.
Yeah, I would say this too, is the other part about, Kansas Ethics actually reviewing this, is not only it will come back to us to lead, but they publish everything. So they'll all be on the website until, even including this opinion here when it's done. And so I don't know how long it takes, so, I have no idea. You know, to my knowledge, it does not ever ask for an opinion from Kansas Ethics. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, as a procedure provided to do this very thing, we should absolutely take advantage of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, I want you to take those, I want you to put them on the fridge. And I'm gonna quiz you in 2 weeks.
I'd say this is valuable information for
Without a doubt.
every councilman, and me, myself included in that, so, because it is the current statutes and laws that are applicable to us in this particular subject.
Correct.
Okay, anything else before we move on to agenda item number 5?